Hello friends, Cole from Selkirk United Church here with our midweek message for December 2nd, 2020. I want to start with some announcements. It is December now, and so as we move into a new month, we move into a new prayer list for our Sunday services. For those who don't know or who may be new to us, we encourage people to send in names of people that they'd like included in our prayer list on Sunday. So we read out those names during our pastoral prayer times at each Sunday service. But we're going to start over with a brand new list this week. So if there are some who you would like to have mentioned, please email us and we will be sure to include those names during pastoral prayers for this coming Sunday. But there is a deadline for that because we do tape early. So try to have those names in by Thursday, that's tomorrow, at about noon. And that'll be plenty of time to have them listed under pastoral prayers. And the emails to send those into are either cole@selkirkunitedchurch.ca or chris@selkirkunitedchurch.ca. Also, our Coping with Grief service is coming up, and it will be available for viewing on Monday, this coming Monday. And if you would like to send in some names to be read aloud at that service, people that you're remembering at this time of year, it's usually people who have passed. And we have, again, a bit of a deadline for that as well, unfortunately, but we do need to record that service over the weekend. So the deadline for sending those names in for our Coping with Grief or Celebration of Life service, as some call it, on Monday, the deadline is Saturday at 6. If you can have those names sent into the same two email addresses, one of those will be great. Appreciate that. Also, our next announcement is about the memory tree that we always have at the front of the sanctuary during this time of the year. And I hear that it is up and there are some stars on it already. And some people have made some donations and sent in some names for us to honor. And those can be sent in either by email or by phone. You can phone the office with those, and that's 482-5914. And just to remind you of another announcement that I mentioned last week, we are still able to support our White Gift Sunday usual donations to Nova House and to the food bank, but in a different way this year. No donations to be brought to the church, but we are accepting cash donations for both of those organizations. You can make the check out to the church, but mark it in some way so that it's either White Gift Sunday or so that it's obvious that we'll know where it's going. And we will split those proceeds between Nova House and the food bank. Thanks to all who have already donated and to those who are planning on it in the next little while. We have some other announcements that I will share with you for Sunday service. I think that's all that I wanted to offer today. We are in the season of Advent, and the first two Sundays of Advent, last week we focused on hope, and this week on peace. I was thinking about hope this past week, and I asked myself the question, is it possible to be too hopeful or too optimistic or too positive? I ran that by a few congregation members this week and had some interesting discussions about that. And the reason I was wondering about that is because I had a funny conversation online with a couple of friends of mine. And it started with a friend of mine from the States sending me a note, and this was part of a 3 or 4 person conversation back and forth. And the note was talking about a story that I hadn't heard before. He said, my hometown of Boston is gifted a Christmas tree every year by the people of Nova Scotia. In 1917, 2 ships collided in a waterway near Halifax. One, a French ship, was loaded with high explosives, and the ship exploded. The explosion was at that time the largest man-made explosion in history, and over 2,000 people were killed in the initial blast alone. Sad, very, very tragic story. The city of Boston immediately dispatched a train loaded with supplies to help the people of Nova Scotia, and many took to the seas to travel up and offer help. As a token of thankfulness, the people of Nova Scotia send Boston a Christmas tree every year. And I thought, that's a neat story. In fact, I said something like neat story or good story, or maybe a bit of both, as I responded. And then a third person joined the conversation and said, Is that a good story? Is it a neat story? The Christmas tree part was good, but 2,000 deaths, and he read the whole article, 9,000 injured is not a good story. And then he sent some emojis saying that he was just teasing me. Anyway, another person chimed in and said, when Cole says good story, he was only talking about parts 2 and 3. Part 2, the sending help. Part 3, the Christmas tree. So tragic story, good story, good story. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And I thought to well, I laughed first of all, of course, because these are some funny characters that I spend some of my time talking to. But I also thought, it's interesting that my initial reaction was good story, sort of glossing over the terrible tragedy of the first part of the story. And then I thought, maybe that's just my nature, optimistic, hopeful, looking for the bright side of anything. And I wondered if maybe I do that too often. And in my conversations with a few of you over the last week or so, I've decided that I don't want to change that. I think that I can notice when there's something that needs to be lamented, and when we commiserate with each other, when we comfort each other, when we offer compassion to each other, I can do that. But I also don't want to lose that sense of being hopeful, being thankful for what the good parts of a story are, watching for the good signs, the hopeful signs, being optimistic about the future. I encourage you all to find that part of you and to try to foster that. Lastly, I wanted to share another story that I think is a good story for Advent. It's a story of hope, and it comes from a colleague of mine. And he talks about his experience of worship. They do live stream worship, which is a little scary to me, similar to these videos, although I always have a chance to erase and start over again if I mess up too bad. But I want to tell you Jeff's story. Jeff is a preacher. I'm not sure what part of the country he's in, but he's a United Church minister. And he writes it this way. He says, I am still trying to recover from worship Sunday morning. I decided to lead worship from the basement in our house in front of one of the spaces my wife decorated along with our Advent wreath. I was getting messages on Facebook Live from various people that the video was not working. Mortified, I grabbed my phone, guitar, presider book, and communion and headed upstairs, hollering for my wife to open the gate we installed to keep our mini pig away from the stairs. Then the door to my office was closed, and I hollered for my wife to open it up all the while I tried to squeeze through with arms full. I got to my phone, put it in the holder, and started a new Facebook live stream separate from the old one. Folks found me again, but I knocked my guitar out of tune, so had to lead the music a cappella. I preached on hope. We celebrated communion. I read a wonderful reflection on hope written by a lady outside our congregation, but just for us. And my people were so gracious in the end. Worship was in God's hands yesterday, and somehow God managed to break into the chaos. And then he finishes with this note. Isn't that the message of Advent? It was for me on Sunday. God can find us in the chaos of our lives and speak to us. And if God can't get through, God will try again. One of the congregants said, I am glad you didn't give up, that you came upstairs and tried again. Where our spiritual Wi-Fi may disconnect, the God of Advent, the God of our everyday, the God of hope, will call out to us and try to reconnect and give hope. If you feel disconnected, find another spot where your spiritual Wi-Fi will find its signal back to the divine modem. Thanks to Jeff for that, I think, uplifting message for us all today. And that's it for today's midweek message. I hope you are well. I hope that God is with you. I know that God is with you as we prepare for this holy season. Peace be with you. Remain hopeful. God bless.